Good evening, warm welcome to you all. Thanks very much for joining us this evening. We are very proud to co-host this special event together with the Slovak American Cultural Center and with Zivena, Spolok slovenských žien in New York. And as you know, we are here today not because of any diplomatic event or any other kind of speeches, but primarily to hear from two very special and very successful ladies, Slovenky vo vesmíre, or Slovak ladies in space. Thank you to our partners, to the Slovak American Cultural Center, led by our one and only Ms. Sabina Szabados. Well, thank you also to Zivena and Zivena's branch here in New York, led by Professor Ivica Labuda and my better half, Andrea. And thanks very much to all of you for joining us. We are very happy that you found time even on this Friday evening for this special opportunity. So, well, I hope you enjoy this special evening and please feel free to ask questions, interact and take the advantage of learning as much as possible. Let me also introduce our two guests and guest speakers. And let me start with somebody who has recently been to space, also physically, Ms. Vanessa O'Brien, who you have already met, and a special friend of our mission to the United Nations and a special representative of Slovakia on many continents, Dr. Michaela Musilova. You will hear a more proper introduction of both ladies in just a minute. So let me now turn over to Ms. Sabina Szabados.
We want to thank, on behalf of the Slovak American Cultural Center, all of you who are here, and most especially Planet Mission, Ambassador Mlynarova and Mrs. Mlynar for hosting us tonight, and of course our partners, Zivena, here. So thank you so much. The Slovak American Cultural Center has been in existence since 1967. We're a nonprofit organization doing different activities within the sphere of promoting Slovak heritage, culture, science activities. So we're really excited to bring this during November Science Month. I've met Vanessa many times. She was at the Slovak Ball, which is one of our signature events. So it's such a pleasure to have her here tonight. We did a webinar with her during COVID, so having it in person is incredible. And Michaela as well, we've been trying to organize this for some time, so I'm really happy to bring these two absolutely incredible women together at this event. So thank you all of you, and I'll hand it over to Dr. Ivica Labuda.
Good evening, dobrý večer. Dobrý večer, everybody can say dobrý večer. Excellent. So Your Excellency, Ambassador Mlynar and Professor Mlynarova, thank you so much for hosting us. This is an incredibly privileged evening that we can be here all together, Slovak American Cultural Center and Zivena together. So I would just like to tell you something about Zivena for those who you don't know. It is the oldest Slovak Women Association, which was created in 1869. The politicians, actually men, saw the need for creating a women's organization to support women to enter politics, to educate them, and also to give them equal rights. As we can see, we still have some glass ceilings, no matter how much we try. But I think that our chapter, which was created just this year in February 2022, is striving to network Slovak women, help so we can all grow professionally and personally. So we are here to really network and to help also the next generation, educate them. I'm in science, so of course in science, but overall. So those who you are not the members yet, please come see me, and we would love to have you in our organization. So I would like to also have a warm welcome to our two exceptional guests. Women in Space is our evening, and I would like to start with the saying per aspera ad astra, which is through adversities to the stars. And I think these two exceptional speakers and our guests can actually be a living example of how we can really reach the stars. So I would like to introduce first Dr. Michaela Musilova, and then Andrea will take over to introduce our second guest. Dr. Michaela Musilova is an astrobiologist. She's a speaker. She's an author. I believe you wrote a book on a woman on the Mars. Yes, right here. A woman from Mars. She not only has a PhD in astrobiology, but she also did research and did many simulated Mars and Moon trips in Hawaii. I have been with Michaela on LinkedIn. She's my friend on LinkedIn, if you can call it. So I was following her steps whenever you were posting another adventure. Really remarkable. So you have been with the NASA for a number of years. She's also a visiting professor at Slovak University of Technology and global faculty at ICU, and a head researcher of the satellite technology. I'm sorry, I have to read everything because my memory sheet is quite full. And there is so much to report. The accomplishments are endless. So Michaela also received numerous prizes and grants, including Emerging Space Leaders Grant, Women in Aerospace, Europe Young Professional Award, and she was selected as one of the most promising 30 under 30 by Forbes in Slovakia. So Michaela, I'm so glad that we finally meet in person, and thank you so much for coming. Would you please introduce our second guest, Andrea?
Thank you.
And I forgot to say that Professor Andrea Mlynarova is also a vice president of Zivena.
So I would like to also say my warm welcome to all of you. Of course, you are sitting on the ground or on the soil of the Slovak Republic, so welcome to Slovakia. And I'm glad that I can really introduce those two living achievements, I would say, and I'm even more proud that they are women. So please, it is my great pleasure to introduce one of our speakers of today, Vanessa O'Brien. Vanessa is an American-born British mountaineer and explorer who spent over 20 years in financial services in New York and in London before moving to Hong Kong in 2009 to begin what turned out to be a fascinating new career as the world-renowned explorer. Vanessa reached the peak of Mount Everest in 2012. On July 28 of 2017, Vanessa became the first British American woman to successfully summit the world's deadliest mountain, K2. Along the way, she set record after record. Among her many achievements are holding the title of the fastest woman to complete the 7 summits, climbing the highest peak on each continent, and being named Explorer of the Year 2018 by Scientific Exploration Society. As if all that weren't impressive enough, Vanessa began mountaineering only a decade before she summited all of those highest peaks of those continents. Not only that, she was also named one of the 10 most recognized alumni of New York University. So she holds, of course, the master's degree from New York University. In June 2020, Vanessa successfully dived into Mariana Trench. She has made a history by diving to the ocean's deepest spot, the Challenger Deep, the lowest point of Mariana Trench. diving 10,925 meters below the waves of the Western Pacific Ocean, a double feat which has been ratified by the Guinness World Records. The long fissure of the Western Pacific lies 200 miles southwest of Guam. The deepest muddy bottom lies nearly 7 miles down in inky darkness under crushing pressure. Vanessa's June 12 voyage meant to spend 3 hours at the bottom of the southern end of Mariana Trench, longer than any other woman with her craft enduring up to 8 tons of pressure. Now Vanessa can call herself the first woman to Earth's highest and lowest point. Over the course of her record and achievements, Vanessa evolved from an adventurer out to challenge herself to an explorer with high altitude perspective on the changing world and a new call to share the knowledge and passion across the globe. But even more exciting adventure and exploration was still awaiting to be achieved by this amazing strong woman, who I really call my friend. And of course, on August 4th, as it was already mentioned, this year, Vanessa made her journey to the outer space. She became the first woman ever to complete Explorer Extrema trifecta. So Vanessa has reached all 4 poles on Earth: Mount Everest, Mariana Trench, South Pole, North Pole, and this past August she has set her 6th Guinness record. Now Vanessa is going to share with us her journey from suburban America, from Slovak community in Detroit, to Everest Death Zone, to the summit of K2, reaching the South and North Pole along the way, and finally to dive to the lowest point of our planet, and of course going to outer space of our planet. So please welcome Vanessa, and I think it wasn't too long. I would like to also share with you one magazine. Vanessa is already known even in Slovakia now because I wrote the article about Vanessa even to the magazine called Tatry. So in Slovakia we are already having some kind of print of Vanessa, and I hope Vanessa will soon come to Slovakia and visit her maybe kind of the heritage place close to Michalovce. So welcome Vanessa, and the floor is yours, of course. Michaela and Vanessa, welcome.
Thank you. 2 things I'd like to present. First are some space flags, just 2. And if I could present the first, these flew with me to space, to His Excellency and Andrea, Michal and Andrea Mlynarova. This is one flag I took to space with me, and I just put it in this little package here. On the back, it's a certification that it's been to space, so you don't have to take my word for it. But it's also
here, this Slovakia flag was taken over the Kármán line to suborbital space, reaching 107 kilometers on the 4th of August 2022 by Vanessa O'Brien.
Absolutely, and on the back it's just all the women who have been to space, since we have a women forum here, and it just shows that there really aren't that many. So starting with the first Russian, Valentina, that was the first, all the way to the very end. So you could just kind of glance at it, but it's not a very long list. So please accept this as a token and a memory of our friendship and our shared heritage. Thank you so much. And finally, to Zivena, who we all love for all of the work she does as president. I have also a Slovak flag that has been in space for you, because of everything you do for the Slovak community. we couldn't do it without you, and we appreciate everything. You are just exemplary with everything, and I appreciate all of your efforts. So, thank you.
On behalf of the Slovak American Cultural Center, I think you can say we're a small country, Slovakia, but we have big dreams and even bigger accomplishments. So thank you so much, Vanessa, for this incredible gift for the organization and for all of us as a Slovak community. So we'll display it at our events and activities in the future. We'll share it with all of you guys.
Thank you. And I are going to ask each other questions, and then we have Q&A after that. So if I could start by asking the first question, and that would be to ask you, because we see your book here, so we're very, very curious, what has your journey been like to get where you are today?
My journey has been a complicated one. I've been dreaming of going to space myself since I was about 8 years old. That's when I decided to want to become an astronaut one day. And I've been trying to make my way towards this dream since that age, but my family is from a more modest background, so they couldn't support me financially for my studies. So instead, since the age of 15, I had multiple jobs during high school, and I tried my best to save some money, get the best possible grades so I could be able to study abroad. I was able to get into University College London, where I decided to study planetary science. It's a combination of geology and astrophysics. And this is because I always wanted to become an astrobiologist, so someone who's searching for aliens, basically, life in space. But at the time, you couldn't study something like that, so I had to basically create my own path. And that's why I decided to do planetary science, and then again, I had to try and get the best possible grades, as many scholarships as possible. I had 3 different jobs while studying to try and maintain, to basically be able to live in London and pay for my studies. And it all paid off. In my second year, I was selected to go to Caltech, which at the time was the best university in the world. It was a scholarship worth $50,000, so something unimaginable for me, but it opened the doors to be able to do research in the US. Here is where I was able to actually bring biology to my studies. And it was around that time that I found out there was a researcher doing astrobiology research at the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And I contacted him, but he said, oh, unfortunately, we can't take international students. And so I was like, oh no, is there another way? Maybe we could find a grant or some other system of getting in. And it took about 6 months of trying to get all these special permissions and everything. And I was able to start working at JPL. I was 21 years old as a visiting researcher. So we basically found a loophole and were able to make the most of it. And that's when I was able to do astrobiology research myself. And it was around that time that the Curiosity rover was being prepared to go to Mars. And I was actually able to put my signature into the rover, which is now on Mars. So that was a really great kind of reward for my work there. And that's when I really started to be more involved in space research. My PhD was into that. I did a lot of research in Arctic environments, so not quite the North Pole or South Pole like you, but I went to Greenland and Svalbard. I did some work in Japan through different scholarships. And that's when I first was part of simulated space missions. That's kind of my thing in Slovakia. I'm known as a Marstronautka because of all these simulated missions that I did. And it was because of my research on studying life in extreme environments and whether similar extreme life or aliens could exist elsewhere was actually also relevant to space settlements. So we could use these extreme life forms to, for example, fertilize soils. And that's how I got selected on the first British crew to do a simulated space mission to Mars. I was a PhD student in the UK, so that's how I found another way of getting in there. And then that really opened the doors. A few years later, I was selected as a commander of a crew, and later I was selected by NASA to go to Hawaii and be part of a mission there. And though that particular mission didn't quite go according to plan, the silver lining was I was offered the position of director of the facility in the end. And that's where I was until recently, running the High Seas Station, and I have been the commander of over 30 simulated space missions to the Moon and Mars.
Wonderful.
Thank you. And since we're on the topic of space, and you know, we all heard how you're the first woman to reach extremes on land, sea, and air, how did you become a candidate for the Blue Origin New Shepard mission NS-22?
Okay, so that was this year, and I guess especially since we have students here, I would say both for ocean, for Challenger Deep and space, when I set the intention before those things existed. In other words, when I came off K2 in 2017, I said in the press that I wanted to go to Challenger Deep, knowing that there was no vehicle that existed. So either the press didn't know what I was talking about, or they just thought, yeah, she's just saying stuff again. Same with space. I came off Challenger Deep in 2020, and I said space, but there had not been a private space mission in 2020. So both of these things I said before they happened. So the first thing I want to say, especially to students, dare to dream, put that intention out there and become mission ready. Study, learn, become eligible before whatever it is you want to do, is ready. Because then you will be chosen. Don't fall behind and wait for whatever you want to catch up. So that happened in both cases. In terms of Challenger Deep, there was one vehicle in 1960. 52 years later, the second vehicle came about. Both went one time, one way, and never worked again. So in 2017, what was the chance of a third? If it was 52 years, perhaps never. But it was 2 years later, in 2019, that the next vehicle came. So it's important just to know what you want. And in that case, I was studying bathymetry. So I took what I knew about mountains and turned it upside down. What did I need to know about the bottom of the world? The oceans. How, that they absorb 25% of the carbon, that half of NASA's leading indicators for climate change were ocean related. I started really understanding what oceans were about and understanding what bathymetry was. So that's how I prepared, even though I couldn't jump into a submersible. I started to understand what 8 tons of pressure might be like. And if somebody tells you it's 252 jumbo jets, well, that hardly matters, because one jumbo jet will do it to you. So it's quite funny when analogies are put together. I also reached out to experts. I'm a big fan of Sir David Attenborough. I reached out to him, and he did return my call. So never be afraid to contact people. Actually, some people will surprise you. Many people are embarrassed or thinking, who would return my call? You'd be surprised. Some people are quite honored to be asked. So that's another lesson that I learned along the way. But for Blue Origin, I went and I learned what zero gravity was like. I went and I took those flights. I learned Martian gravity, lunar gravity, zero gravity, how the gravity offset in different levels, a third, a sixth, and zero, and what it was like to offset my weight, how a very little touch could send me halfway across a plane, and how I had to control my flailing movements of arms and not swim in the air, which is ridiculous, but people do it, and just to control my movements softly, gently. And so by the time Blue Origin came around looking for a second woman and their first woman with first flight for 2 women, I was ready. So that's how they came about.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And I just wanted to actually add to what you said. I completely agree. Dream, when I started, there was no astrobiology, but I knew I wanted to study aliens in space somehow, so I had to kind of create the path. And like with the researcher at NASA, I tried my best to find a way to get in, even though it wasn't possible for international students. But if you try and you really know what you want, and of course do it in an ethical and good way, you can reach your dreams.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of which, can you tell us what was it like working for NASA? Because I still don't think there's a lot of women necessarily walking down those floors at NASA.
So at first, for me, it was a dream come true. I had been dreaming of working for NASA since I was 8 years old. It always seemed like an impossible dream, and then suddenly at 21 it was happening. And what was actually very interesting about that time is that because my finances were very limited, though my scholarship for Caltech was paid, I had to pay for living in Pasadena, which is a part of Los Angeles that's pretty expensive. And so there was a point in time where I basically didn't have enough money to pay for rent. And so I was just couch surfing at random strangers' places. I would sleep on my backpack with my laptop and all these valuables. My suitcase was on the floor to kind of protect me from the random strangers I was sleeping with. And then in the morning I would put on my backpack and I would go work at NASA. And so it was just a very strange time of my life. But you know, I made it work, so I really wanted to. And it was amazing. It was like science fiction to be able to work at JPL and to look at the rovers being made that soon after actually went all the way to Mars. And now it basically opened up doors where even these days, though I don't work for NASA, I work with NASA on different projects, whether it's astrobiology or other space technology related. And yes, there's still not enough women, and it's for various reasons. It's not that women aren't good enough, not at all. That's not at all the issue. It's just many times, especially in aerospace, the conditions aren't really right for women. There's still, unfortunately, a lot of harassment, discrimination, things like that. We heard talk about glass ceilings before, still a big problem. So even NASA, who has a certain reputation on the inside, there's still a lot of these problems we have to tackle. And it's just not set up well to support women who want to have families, so they have to leave before they can pursue a career. So there's still a lot of work to be done on that front. And so you mentioned all the interesting things about training for zero gravity. So what was the training like for your suborbital space flight? And did you know your team beforehand?
So for Blue Origin specifically, they were pretty strict. Our training took place in West Texas. So first there is West Texas. You might notice that it's not just Texas, it's West Texas. So that was an eye-opener. That's on the border of Mexico, in the middle of nowhere. So it's almost like a film set in the middle of a bunch of land is a bunch of Airstream trailers and a large building that houses a rocket. And so that's where they stage their launch. And it's an interesting place. They're very, very serious about safety. So this was the 6th manned mission. So only 6 previous human space flights had been flown. Although it's called NS-22, they had 22 launches, but only 6 of them held people. So NS stands for New Shepard, after Alan Shepard, the first American to fly, period, to fly in 1962, I believe, and that was suborbital. So these flights are suborbital. So suborbital simply means that they are not orbiting the Earth, they are going up past the Kármán line, which is an international line that differentiates by federal agreed lines of acceptance what is the difference between Earth's boundary and the boundary of outer space. NASA has a lower definition of, 50 kilometers or something like that. But they believe that this 100 is the definition. So it's arbitrary because obviously molecules of air can travel and not just hit a line. But in any case, the training is serious about safety. So the first thing we learn about is what is a rocket. A rocket is a propulsion module that has a crew capsule that sits on top. The rocket part is often called a booster. The type of fuel, so in this case it's hydrogen, liquid hydrogen mixed with oxygen. So what happens when you have hydrogen and 2 oxygen molecules? Anybody? Water. So this is a good thing for the environment in terms of what it produces. It's not going to leave a carbon footprint in terms of the fuel that it uses. It is a rocket that's built to be reused, so it is something that when it flies to space, the crew capsule will divide from the booster, fly a little bit higher. The booster and the rocket comes back to where it launches, the launch pad, and the crew capsule goes to an apogee that's a little bit higher and then lands with parachutes on the ground. So it's not over sea. We remember seeing some things that used to be over sea. This lands on land. So to offset the impact of land, there are some safety features. One is that there are 3 drogue parachutes that will slow down the descent. The crew capsule itself is made of a crushable structure. There are thrusters and jets that fire before it hits the earth that will help the landing. The chairs themselves that the astronauts sit in are like a scissor type structure to help delay the impact. And there's a couple of things that have been built in to help offset impact. So basically it's safety, safety, safety. And what we do for those 7 days is get up at 3 a.m., go to bed at 7 p.m., and practice, practice, practice. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice. So we are doing this over and over and over again, so it is almost like muscle memory. We get in the capsule, we go to our seats, we get into the seat, we go through all of the different procedures, we understand from Capcoms what they're going to say, what it'll sound like, what the shape feels like, what the impact will feel like, and then we take written tests. If we don't pass 100%, we don't fly. If any of our crew members are afraid at any point in time, they have up until T-2 minutes and 30 seconds to say 3 words, I will not fly. Up until 2 minutes and 30 seconds, they can say, I will not fly. If anybody says those words, the flight is canceled for everyone. So your team matters. Psychologically, they matter a lot for you personally because that crew capsule is weight balanced. If they don't fly, you don't fly. And once you're up there, there's 3 minutes of weightlessness. Weightlessness happens when the motor turns off and you're separated from the booster when you fall. 3 minutes of weightlessness goes fast. And the most important thing is that if you can't make it back to your seat, you do not sit in somebody else's seat because those are adjusted for each individual person. So you can crack a spine, you can have a serious injury if you do not sit in your own seat. If you can't make it back, you lie on the floor. Because the worst part is not the 3 times the speed of sound going up at 3,400 kilometers an hour. It's coming back, piercing Earth's orbit, which is about 5.2 Gs. That is so strong you can't even lift a finger, not even a finger. You just sweat profusely. Things just don't fall to Earth. That's the amazing thing. It's hard to get back into Earth. So it's an incredible amount of training. I respect the organization a lot, and it matters who you fly with for safety reasons.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. That's why we, even with the simulated space missions, you have to train so much, because we're talking about preparing for missions to the moon and Mars, where, again, you're going to be stuck with the crew for long periods of time. And if you don't get along, you can't just go back home. It might take 2 years before you can go back home. So yeah, teamwork is extremely important, and being able to trust each other.
So you talked about some difficult times, especially when you were living in Pasadena. What was your motivation during your difficult times? and has your motivation changed over the years?
It has changed. So at first, I think it was the initial dream of becoming an astronaut, an astrobiologist, and pursuing something that seemed impossible at the time, despite not being able to have the support from my family. I'll admit there was also an element of trying to prove myself, because I am from a family of diplomats and we moved around a lot when I was a child. And I would never fit in wherever I was. I was always the new girl in school that didn't speak the language properly. I was always picked on. Teachers, instead of trying to understand, they thought I was stupid or whatever, something. So I was always a loner. I was almost forced to be a rebel in school. And almost no one believed in me. I'm actually incredibly grateful to my maths teacher, who was the only one who believed in me and came and talked about it. But thanks to him, I was kind of able to just power through. And so I guess I wanted to prove to everyone that, I was more than they thought I was. But that changed, yeah. So with time, then it was about trying to achieve this dream that seemed impossible. I wanted to show that even Slovakians and women in general can be successful in aerospace. It's still an area that is dominated by men. As I mentioned, there's a lot of unfortunate things that make it difficult for women to be successful there. And then later, it was actually young people that became my motivation. I started to do more and more outreach work. It just kind of happened at first. Some people were interested in astrobiology, what is that? So I gave a few interviews. And then I started to get more and more young people mentioning, we really want to do what you're doing. How can we get involved? And so the more outreach I did, the more I actually saw that the public is really interested, and that when I give presentations now in Slovakia, I get children from this big all the way to fans in their 80s that are say they're my biggest fan, and it's really wonderful to see how people can get engaged in work that you and I do, and if we can motivate them in any way, that feels like the real reason why I'm doing what I'm doing, and I can't wait to do more of it.
Absolutely. I think having a catalyst, even if it was something like that, is, just builds you in strength. So I think it's great.
Thank you.
No problem.
So you kind of described the space flight that sounded amazing and quite the experience. So what did you see and feel when you were in space?
Okay, so during the actual space flight, so 3 minutes of weightlessness. The view. We all go for the view, right? No matter what we do or where we go, it's all about the view. And I remember reading so much about when William Shatner went, and he was talking about the darkness, and he was drawn to the darkness. And that really struck him because all he could describe is the darkness. And if I could describe the crew capsule, it's all windows and it rotates. And the first thing I saw was Earth, but not the whole blue marble, as it's called, only 180 degrees, because we're not that high. So, as a mountaineer, I was busy looking at what was sitting above the Earth, or the layers of atmosphere. So, they come in, it's really almost like different colors, so I could see, okay, there is the troposphere, there's the stratosphere, there's the mesosphere, and I know I'm in the thermosphere. But each one sat like a little bit of a layer of cloud, so I was busy in my head saying, okay, well that's that, and that, and I could see them. But I don't remember anything dark. Now when I go back and I look at the pictures, there is dark, but I never saw it. What I did see was the brightest light I've ever seen in my life in terms of the sun. That sun was like a flashlight in my eyes, as if somebody literally took the torch in my eyes, so bright. And all I could think about was, wow, without any protection, that sun with just those little tiny layers, how is the earth going to be protected? And that's all I could think about was how strong the sun was. It wasn't for me to say whether that was a thin atmosphere. I had nothing to compare the atmosphere to. But I was busy counting the layers and thinking the sun was so bright. And then I had a 30-second warning. And I was like, oh shit. Because gravity's like, isn't really allowing me to get back in my seat the way I would normally get back in my seat, right? I'm fighting going down, and it's pulling me up, so I need my whole 30 seconds. So yeah, that went fast. But I never saw the dark, only in pictures after. Beautiful experience.
Wonderful. I guess it really, depends on each person, what you're looking for. You were fascinated by the layers. Maybe someone else saw the darkness and that's, what attracted them.
Yeah, I maybe because I read about him and the darkness, thinking about it, but I never saw it. Really strange. But I can't help but look at the book, so I'm wondering, what is your book, A Woman from Mars, about?
So this is currently only in Slovakian, Žena z Marsu, or Woman from Mars. I am working on an English version of that, but it's a bit more complicated here in the US, so it might take a moment. But it's basically my life story, talking in more detail what I shared with you earlier. But the main goal of the book is to inspire other young people, but maybe not even just young people who want to pursue their dreams, and perhaps they felt like there were too many obstacles in the way, or they're not of the right gender or nationality or whatever it is, and that's stopping them. So I shared my story, all the good and the bad, and what I hear from people is that, they're surprised by a lot of the bad things. I think they expect science to be a bit more glamorous or easier, and so when you're constantly having to look for money, grants, things like that, have to be partially homeless at times, that that opened the eyes, I think, to a lot of people what it is to really pursue dreams like that, especially space-related, which are not the easiest ones to get to. So I really shared my story, what was my driving force, how it changed, like we talked about it before, who the important people in my life were that really helped me, supported me throughout these years, but also about me as a person, my hobbies and things. I had to sacrifice a lot to be able to pursue my dreams, because with multiple jobs while studying, always trying to get scholarships and things, I even had charities that supported me because I just really struggled to pay for the expensive universities. I had to sacrifice a lot of my own hobbies and things, and it wasn't until after I turned 30 that I was like, okay, maybe I need to slow down now and focus on myself a little bit, and now I'm kind of learning to have this better balance in life and figure out what's important beyond just passion and career. And so I hope this is kind of like a human version of a story like that, and I hope it can help others figure out, if they want to pursue their dreams, if they're willing to make certain sacrifices. But for me, it was definitely all worth it in the end.
Excellent. Writing a book is not easy.
I'm looking forward to talking to you about it.
So I commend you on that. Excellent.
Thank you. So I understand you studied the overview effect while you were in space. That is definitely a popular topic. And you were measuring the brain's response to seeing Earth from space. What other scientific studies did you do, and what were the results?
Okay, so I always try to do something scientific wherever I am and wherever I go. And part of that is because basically, by the time I was born, everything was already done. Every mountain was climbed. Every place was already explored. If I had the point of view of why bother, I would basically never get out of bed, right? Because it's already been done. So I really had to look at it in a different lens. And my lens was, my generation had different problems than previous generations. My generation was facing things like climate change, and so there were different reasons to go back to these places. So my view was, if I'm going to be the boots on the ground, so to speak, then I'm going to go and take the samples and take the risk so that I can bring something for the scientist to study that will add value, if you will, and give information that they didn't have before, because we need it. Things have changed. So there was a reason to go back. It wasn't just to go to the top. It was to go to the top because the glaciers were melting from the top, not just the toes at the bottom. And we need to know the rate of change. So maybe like a stunt double for scientists or something like that. So that was my view. And so the question was, what was I going to do in space? Because it's not that long. And I really, really thought about this. And I had read that all the astronauts, even back in the 60s, always came back and they talked about what they saw, this view. And they talked about how it changed them in some way. But they never measured it. So I'm a pretty left-brain person anyway, analytical. And I thought, how can I measure what they're describing? Now the good thing is, those big MRI machines in hospitals, you can now like just put on. You look like Daft Punk a little bit, but you can do it. They have lithium batteries, so you can't do it in the spaceship because, you know, that might crash. But you can do it before and after. So that's what I did. I did a brain study, and I wanted to see what my brain looked like before I went to space and what my brain looked like after I went to space. Now, to do it, I needed a test object. In other words, I needed to look at Earth rotating, and I need to look at an object that was not Earth, but of a similar size rotating. So before I went to space, I looked at Earth rotating and non-Earth rotating, and my brain did not differentiate between those two objects. They were the same. I didn't care about Earth or that object. My brain did not differentiate that at all. After I came back from space, my parietal lobe decreased significantly when I looked at Earth. And what that means is that I was losing my sense of self when I looked at Earth. When this part of my brain lit up, which meant it was decreasing in activity, I was at one with the object, which happened to be Earth. So I'm just one of one. I'm just a test. But directionally, it proved something interesting, which was there's something to this. There's something that could be measured. And it was along the lines that people were talking about. So my researcher was extremely excited, and he was part of the original studies of the overview effect. And so we are now trying to get the commercial private companies to adopt this for all future companies, because if we can see a trend, that would be amazing. So that's what I was thinking of, because look, if you just do heart rate and silly stuff, that's not really interesting, because everybody does that. But something with the gut, or measuring stress hormones, or brain, or, it had to be something interesting. But that's what I thought of.
Oh, great, and I fully support you in doing scientific research while doing these activities. I think that's very important, and of course something that I enjoy doing, but I feel like that's basically what I live for, is to contribute to science, and everything I do is not just to check something off a list, but to hopefully bring some interesting information to humanity to help us build up on that.
Absolutely. And now I'm going to ask you a question about something that I'm very curious about, and it's the Seventh Summits Project. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I mean, it's one of those many things we have in common. You've already climbed the 7 summits. I only just started. I actually climbed Kilimanjaro last month in September. And it was in a similar way, like you were saying, it was for research purposes. It wasn't just to go up there. Again, there was no, goal or Guinness Book of World Records or anything I could achieve by doing that. But instead, I want to do it to do research, educational work, and outreach while climbing these mountains, and to again bring something to humanity. In particular, I'm very interested in climate change. Like you said, unfortunately, we see it kind of everywhere around the world. But for example, in Kilimanjaro, you can really see that there's almost no glaciers left up there, and it was very jarring, especially because my father, he climbed it in 1995, and pictures of him on the summit, there were still glaciers there, and when he described it, even from a distance, you could see all this snow and ice on the mountain, and now there's barely anything there. So even talking to the porters and guides and people that live and work there, they could tell us that they think it's all going to disappear within 5 to 10 years, which is very sad. And so I'm hoping to contribute to research related to climate change, but also to just raise awareness about how our planet is changing and how we can do our little to help it, at least with, for example, limiting pollution on these mountains. I'm sure you saw with Everest and other places how much pollution is still left behind, littering and so on. I'm also doing research related to extremophiles, so that's something that I've been loving to do my whole life. I myself consider myself a bit of an extremophile, and you definitely are. To study extremophiles, you have to go into their places where they exist, whether it's the surfaces of glaciers, space, depths of oceans, and so on. And so I want to study, what can survive in these extreme environments at very high mountains. And of course, more educational and outreach activities. So for example, I had a sensor from a company called STEMpunks that does a lot of work with children around the world. I actually just came back from travels to Dubai and the UK and other places working with them. And I was measuring the humidity in the soil kind of along the way, climbing up to the mountain, and children around the world can compare that with the soil in their backyards or schools or nearby parks and things like that. So it's a way for them to get engaged with what I do. We also looked at light pollution and other things that, again, we can measure in our backyards, and here we could see there was light pollution on Kilimanjaro, which you would think a mountain that tall in the middle of nowhere, it's surprising that there's light pollution even there, but unfortunately our human impact really reaches far and high. And for me, it is also a way of continuing with my astronaut training to do research in these extreme environments, to lead a team there. I believe will help me gain other important skills that will hopefully one day help me be selected for a mission by NASA or another research type expedition to space. And I realized I forgot one thing earlier. The reason the book is called A Woman from Mars, I realized I didn't explain that, is that's actually the nickname I have in Slovakia. When I started to do more and more outreach, I would meet people on the street, in the forest, on the train, and so on. And they'd be like, "Oh, you're the woman from Mars." I'm like, "Oh yeah, sure." I guess I'll go with that nickname because I always talk about space and Mars in particular. And so we just decided, okay, no, that's the name of the book, and hopefully in English it'll be the same thing. All right, and so what about, what were you able to take with you in your payload bag when you went to space?
Oh, well, the most important is the Slovakian flag, I would say, in the payload bag, for sure. Besides that, I would say a $2 bill. So probably since John Glenn, I don't know where, John Glenn definitely started the $2 bill, but it was a symbol of good luck. They are not in circulation really as trade, so you have to find them or be given them or beg a bank to give you one. But you can find them. But they, it's always been an astronaut sort of token of good luck, so that was definitely in the bag. There were rosaries to have even better luck, just in case the $2 bill didn't work. There were higher powers, let's say. So that was in the bag. I had some seeds, so planting seeds that an 11-year-old girl had given me. She was from West Sussex in England, and she had chosen me as her favorite explorer earlier in this year, and I was not yet a space candidate, so when I became a space candidate, I reached out to her mom and said, what can I take for Catherine? And then the BBC introduced us from Astronaut Village, so I had never met her, and we met live. So that was an incredible experience. Let's see, so other things, actually that's not even the funniest thing. The funniest thing is I was allowed 6 guests. So an hour before my flight, 6 people rush up to me and hand me stuff. So my payload bag is way checked. I can't even get to it, but 6 people run up and hand me stuff. Can you take? And I'm like, where? I mean, I have like one pocket, one thing on my shoulder, and the spacesuit is so tight because it's fire retardant. I mean, I have like maybe between my bra. I mean, where do they want me to put these things? But I'm given the wedding ring of somebody, a watch of somebody else. I mean, they're just literally taking things off of them so they can have it go to space. And this was the funniest thing I think I have ever encountered. It would have been a great sitcom. But people were just undressing themselves and unloading everything for me to put somewhere, of which there was nowhere. And I had these bulky things just poking out of my shoulder, out of the side of my pants, and just filled with the 6 things of my guests. So yeah, that was fun. But yeah, that's kind of it. But sentimental things. They didn't get certificates that said they went to space, though, interestingly enough.
Should have been in the payload bag,
Yeah, should have been in that payload bag, so yeah.
That's what makes us human, is those sentimental things, those things that are unique for us. And so, it's definitely great that you were able to carry those things and the seeds for the girl. That must have been so wonderful for her.
Yeah, it's clever. I think that was a clever choice. So speaking about, tell us about outreach and educational work. Why do you think it's important?
I really see the effect of the work I do, whether it's in Slovakia, but now actually I do a lot of outreach and educational work around the world. I think at first I wanted to show that women in particular could do these kinds of activities, but nowadays I must say I'm extremely happy when I have little boys come up to me and they're like, oh, you're my hero, you're my inspiration, and the fact that they don't care that I'm a woman, that I can be a hero for them, regardless of who I am as a person, just because of what I do or try to do. So I find it extremely fulfilling. It's my main motivation when I have bad days. I just think of all the children I've worked with over the years, but not even children, literally people of all ages that I was able to help in some shape or form. And that drives me, especially the days, the dark days, or when I have to do tasks that I really don't like doing. Like, for example, social media, I do it for outreach, but I really don't like it. Like if I could not have an Instagram or something, I'd be the happiest person. So many times I have to make a video or a picture, and it's just like the most frustrating thing ever, but I know that someone will see it somewhere and it will inspire them or motivate them, or maybe they'll just learn something from it, which is really ultimately the other important goal of outreach for me, is to help teach people something. And just like the 7 Summits project, yes, I would love to climb those mountains, and it's definitely a motivation of mine, but the fact that I can help others by doing this project is so much more important to me, even though it is challenging, to find the resources for it. Even Kilimanjaro took a year of fundraising for that, and the other ones are probably going to be even more challenging, but it is worth it in the end, and outreach is so important. And I'll just add that unfortunately it's not regarded as important in many places, especially in Slovakia, I found, and this is something I'm hoping to change with all my activities. When I was in Slovakia a few years ago, between my PhD and going to Hawaii, I actually came back home because I thought, okay, now's the best time to try and change things for the better in my own country. And thanks to the work that my organization, the Slovak Organization for Space Activities, the work we did, we were able to launch the first Slovak satellite. I started teaching astrobiology at a university in Slovakia, and now there's multiple startups that do space research, and Slovakia, as of actually only a few weeks ago, became an associate member of the European Space Agency, and it was mostly through our work doing outreach that we actually help raise awareness about this and show to the public that it is worth in Slovakia to invest into the space sector and open these doors to the next generation. But at the time, there were certain circles of people who didn't appreciate that, who thought, I was this young woman making these big changes in our small country, and I faced a lot of resistance to the point where this group of older professors, male professors, I'll add, they started spreading lies about me in the media. They even tried to blackmail me because I was nominated as a professor at a university, and they thought 28 years old, I was too young to deserve something like that. And so, it was a very difficult and dark time, but again, I would see the impact of the work I did. I would get children's project about space and myself in the Post all the time, and I was like, who cares about those old people? No offense, just, they're set in their ways, and I guess I was disrupting the status quo they were in, but it is not for them that I'm doing this, it is for the next generation, but ideally for everybody, and I hope that with time, even they recognized my work and now appreciate that thanks to, in part, my work as well, we're finally getting closer to becoming a full member of the European Space Agency, and hopefully in a few years, Slovakians can become astronauts too and don't have to take the long way around, which is what I'm currently doing.
Perfect. Sounds like a game plan.
Thank you. So what are your views on the private sector in aerospace, especially in light of the flight after yours that crashed? Do you believe that disrupting the space sector is a good thing?
That's a complicated question. I think it is better than it's more good than it's bad. So the private sector brings, should bring efficiency, lower cost, higher productivity, all the things that competition, it should bring things that you would think private sector would bring. I think it disrupts in a way that's positive. I think it will open those doors for a new generation. So if the only way to space once upon a time was NASA and the military, that won't be the future generation's pathway. They will be able to go to space in many different ways. Through STEM education alone, they'll be able to live and work in space, and it won't be ISS. It'll be a suborbital reef. It'll be sitting in the middle somewhere, not necessarily with access to Russia or China, but somewhere more central in the world where multiple nationalities will have access to it, and there will be more minorities and women involved than we've ever seen before. So it'll be much more open, much more, the access will be more available, and it will not be just military and NASA as the path. So from that perspective, I think it's wonderful because of all the things that I've done, space unites like nothing else. Everybody, everywhere looks up in the sky and they dream. They see the stars. They see the moon. Young, old, rich, poor, regardless of religion, they all look up and they dream. And it's the one category that can unite people everywhere in the world. So that private sector to me is disrupting in a positive way. Also because space brings benefits like telecommunications, internet, all the satellites, security. I was talking to somebody earlier working with ISIs and security in satellites. It's amazing what we're able to do just for the benefit as a knockoff just on space. Forget the research and the travel. Here's what I don't like about it. What I don't like is the word tourism. We're not there yet. It's something that the press attach to space, and it's careless.
It's careless because tourism involves accommodation, it involves entertainment, it involves food and beverage. This is not that. This is dangerous. You have to know what you're doing, people die. The rocket after mine crashed. This is not tourism. If people want to go to space as a tourist, we are not there yet. I'm not saying we won't get there, but I don't advocate for that. And that's why I don't like the private sector and that term. And actually by law, US Code 50, there are only 3 terms that you can by law call somebody. If they work for the government, it's an astronaut. If they're part of somebody who works in space, it's crew, or it's a space flight participant. That's codified. Anything else is not a proper term. It's the press, and I just object because it's careless. It implies that you can just go and do something and be silly. And people do go and do those things and be silly. So I know. I had them do flight. But I don't like it. I think it's still at a stage where people should be serious. So good and bad.
I agree, and I'm also very cautious with the private sector. I believe it's great how they're opening doors, and now they're making even space research more accessible. SpaceX is, helping astronauts get to the ISS and so on. However, it seems to be, nowadays only a handful of people have the power through their companies to get people into space, and I feel like the power is getting to their heads as well, and they feel like they can do whatever they want because they have the money and power to do it, and that's what I'm afraid of. As they say, with great power comes great responsibility, and I feel like some people aren't quite deserving of that, or not, being responsible like they should be. So I'm a bit cautious on that front too, and I really hope things won't turn for the worse.
Yep, absolutely. So, given the topic of Mars, it would be wrong for me not to ask you if you want to go to Mars yourself.
Yes, definitely. It has been, again, a dream of mine since I was a girl, not just to go to space, but to do research there, and where ultimately to go to look for life is Mars. At least, of course, there's plenty of other very interesting places, even in our solar system, where we could find life, but somewhere we could go as humans in some near future. Mars is the most likely candidate. So yeah, I'll try my best to be able to go to space like yourself, though hopefully for me, I would love to be able to do research for longer periods of time, go to the moon, but really Mars is where I want to go and be able to do astrobiology research in person and help build the first settlements there. But we'll see, it's still in the making. I'm going to try my best my whole life, and at least I'll know that even if it doesn't work out, that I definitely put myself out there, did it all to make it work. And hopefully, even if it might not work out for me, I really hope that my work will help open the doors to others to achieve that, and that will be, satisfactory enough for me.
So for those that don't know, what she's just said is very brave. Because Mars is really one way.
For now.
So she's made a very brave statement. And one of the big proponents of Mars has been Buzz Aldrin, the second man on the moon. He is probably the smartest person I know, and a big proponent of Mars. And he has your back on that. He's a big fan of it. And but that's a very brave statement, because right now, people who choose to do that are really saying that they will not return, for what we know now. So to colonize there would be not to return. So a very brave statement.
Thank you. I'm still optimistic that I'll be able to come back, but you have to be ready for it all. As they say, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. So I've talked a lot about my motivation. What about you? What drives you?
You know, I was reflecting on your statement of your catalyst, but I think I am definitely drawn to the harder things. So, not the impossible things, but the things that I think have a chance of happening but are hard. And I think what drives me is probably the naysayers, the people that say it can't be done, the doubting Thomases, proving people wrong. But also, you know, providing inspiration and motivation to show people that hard work and determination can really take them down a path that's worthwhile. You know, that's really sometimes all it takes. You know, you pointed out so many struggles along the way. You know, I also really came from nothing, you know, and worked my way through school and, you know, never really had, you know, had anybody, you know, helping me. And, you know, just for the benefit of the audience, there was a psychologist that undertook a study, and the study was, why is it that some people accomplish more than others? It was such a simple question. And she received a grant to answer that question. And it wasn't just about, you know, having, you know, endurance and long-term goals. What made people accomplish more than others was having motivation in the long term despite adversity and failure. Ergo, no adversity and failure, no grit. So what you've had, what I've had, is adversity and failure. And that's what tends to make people accomplish more. And I think it's being able to overcome those things, share those stories, and provide that motivation to others. So what drives us ultimately is probably those harder projects, those longer term projects, and if there's adversity in the way, it's like, hey, I'll have that for breakfast. That's just not something that's going to stop me, because I'm always optimistic. I'm never not optimistic. And that's just an important trait to have.
Hear on all that. I definitely am of the same mindset. I'm hearing the noise from the food upstairs. I'm thinking maybe we'll do one last question, and then I don't know if you want to give the floor to the audience.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so how about, tell us, I think we'd all like to know about the simulated space missions that you were doing with Mars.
Yeah, so the idea behind those simulated space missions is to prepare humans to be able to live and work on another planet, whether it's the moon or Mars. And not necessarily the space flight there, of course, that's an important element, but that's studied in different studies. But here it's really, what would the first settlement be like on the moon and Mars? So we select people, a crew of 6 people, to spend from several weeks up to a whole year enclosed in a small dome, not much bigger than this room, and you have to basically live and work there with limited resources, limited amounts of food, water. Your communication with Earth is limited. You mostly just communicate by email. There's no social media. When you're on a simulated Martian mission, there's a 20-minute delay each way. That means even if something bad were to happen, someone get injured, it would take at least 40 minutes for a message to come back from Earth to help us. So we are trained to be as independent as possible, to be able to problem solve on our own. And all the research we do is something that's meant to contribute to us being able to go to the moon or go back to the moon and eventually to Mars to live and work there. And so yeah, my research projects that I've been involved with have been amazing. Everything from how to grow spinach using human hair. That's an experiment actually designed by high school students in Slovakia as part of a Slovak competition that I organized in Slovakia called Mission to Mars, or Misia Mars. And so again, a genius idea developed by students that we applied during our missions. I actually joke there's a whole closet filled with human hair from my different crews over the years. And one day a crew member just opened and said, "Oh my God, did you murder someone in here?" No, it's all voluntary donations of hair from different parts of the body. And again, the idea is, we're gonna keep growing hair. Why just cut it off and throw it away? We can use it for something useful and reuse it during these missions. So yeah, research all the way from there to what are the best types of crew members for these missions. We talked about earlier how it is important to work well in a team. I imagine being in a team with 5 other people for 2-3 years on a Martian mission. You really have to be able to get along. But it's natural, there will be some conflict. We're humans, we're different from each other. We all have different needs and wants. So we have to figure out what are the typical problems that are going to happen during these missions and how to best deal with them. So I really enjoyed that part of the research. I was able to work with over 30 different crews with people from all over the world. And my favorite part was choosing the crew to be as diverse as possible. Because like you said, minorities and women are still very underrepresented, not only in aerospace, but many other areas in the world. And so I wanted to give these people opportunities to be able to be part of these missions. And the more women and people of color from different minorities that took part in the missions, the more people applied, because they could see themselves like, oh look, there's someone like me doing this. I can become an analog astronaut too. And so it was really rewarding for me to be able to open these doors to so many people from around the world. And also what I found is that diversity needs to be not just on the level of nationalities and so on, but also in terms of our area of expertise. For a long time, these, for example, NASA simulated missions would focus on having just engineers and scientists be part of crews, but actually people who are very different can contribute in incredible ways. They have a different perspective, different way of thinking, so if a problem arises, they can help us solve it better, but also it helps us bond better as a team. So I found that having even artists, journalists, teachers on crews really helped change the crew dynamics and just have a better mission. And so I'm happy to say that now I have a lot of space family all around the world thanks to these missions, and it's been an incredible experience.
Excellent. Okay, so questions. Over to you guys.
And I actually have a question for Ms. O'Brien. So in the speech introducing you, it mentioned that you worked in the financial sector before. So I was just wondering what inspired you to make that change, career change.
Absolutely, thank you. So the honest answer is the Great Recession of 2009-10. I don't know that I would have changed what I was doing if I didn't have a catalyst. And the catalyst was that it was a terrible time to be in finance. So around that time, that was the subprime mortgage crisis, and I was actually in Hong Kong at that time, so it wasn't so bad there, but it was just terrible. I just recently went and looked it back up, just as a reminder, and I remember Northern Rock, they had queues in the UK, people stuffing, money under their mattresses. Just the too big to fail firms failing. It was horrendous. And to be fair, I left my job. I was not fired, but I was also a growth person. I was in the right job at the wrong time. I was on a base salary, highly remunerated on bonuses that had to do with trading risk. So, in other words, if I found a counterparty where I could, buy receivables or accounts and basically like mergers and acquisitions, but build portfolios, I could make a lot of money. But I could not do that during that type of an economy. So basically I was like, that's it, I'm out. But living in Hong Kong,
versus the UK, they had a 15% tax rate. So for the first time ever, my husband and I could basically live somewhere where it was the same as both of us working. In other words, two of us working and paying 50%, or one of us working and paying 15%. So I drew the short straw and it was not working. But as a type A person, I could not do nothing. So it drove me crazy to be in Hong Kong, and I couldn't find my tribe. I couldn't find people to hang out with because they were either women with small children who had no attention span, so they were constantly yelling at their kids, or the ladies who lunch who were constantly drunk by 1 o'clock, or they were women who traveled, and in Asia that meant like, hey, I'll see you like in 3 weeks, and so by the time you saw them again, you had to like rebuild the relationship. It was just really tough to find my group. And so Hong Kong being like tall buildings, habit trails of just interconnected everythings, I just started hiking. Hiking. And somebody suggested Everest, and it was like, Everest. Where is it? How high is it? I was vaguely familiar of Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay, but I couldn't tell you exactly where it was or how high it was. But I was classically trained to think that climbing was a skill, and a skill could be taught and therefore learned. So I was never afraid of that challenge. That's kind of how it started.
Thank you.
Hi, I have a question for Vanessa. Sorry, I can't really stand up. I was wondering, you mentioned that they did functional MRI before and after. So do they take blood samples before and after, like routinely from everyone, or would that be also considered as a research?
I think blood would be good. I did not take blood. I'd be curious about, the reason I would like blood and saliva are things if I could measure stress or enzymes or something that would show anything to do with stress or hormones related to stress, which sometimes are digestive, on whether there was fear associated with the flight.
There are actually some markers they started measuring, like the neuronal markers. They can be released to blood if you go after you go to space. And cerebrospinal fluid, I think they measure it in one of those, private,
Yeah, I think that would be great, because fear was something like the amygdala and stuff. I was curious, because fear would be interesting for me to know. Would I have fear or would I not have fear? And I would love to have captured, actually, if I could have done saliva, actually, let's see, saliva, urine maybe, and blood, like any of those markers where I could get any of those enzymes, capture them all, I mean, frankly.
Yeah, I wish you had a samples because we could have run some of those.
Thank you for that suggestion. I think that would really have been good.
Hi, this is for both of you. You both talked about dreaming about things that didn't exist yet, whether it was your major or adventures you wanted to take. So what's something that you're curious about now?
Yeah, great question. I think now I set my mind on the 7 Summits project. That's going to be a big endeavor, both training for it, being able to do the research, but unfortunately also fundraising and that whole thing. But my main goal is still Mars and space, being able to do research there. So I'm trying to find steps along the way to get closer to that goal, but most importantly to enjoy it. If you hear astronauts talk about their experience, they emphasize that it's very much about the journey, not just trying to reach the goal, because it's such a difficult goal to reach, to be selected by NASA or ESA one day or whatever, that it may just not work. You have to accept that, and so to just live for that, and then maybe it will go away, or even if it works out, your whole life to be just about that one moment, it also would be a waste. So it's important for me to enjoy my life along the way, do things that I enjoy, and again, try my best to make it work, but if it doesn't work out, at least I'll know that I lived my life and I tried my best. So next big thing, I
I don't know that I have like something in terms of an expedition. There are things that are on my radar screen. Like Shackleton ship, the Endurance. I'd like to go get that in the Antarctic because we know where it is, and I want that bell. It's not a pretty bell, but it's the story that, especially after COVID, he was such a great leader of saving his men. I just think, for that to sit in a museum or even over the Houses of Parliament, the UK needs some help right now. They've gone through a few prime ministers, probably this year than they have in certain centuries. But, so there's things like that cross my mind, and I think, okay, it's not even that deep. It's only 10,000 meters, something like that. Or 10,000 feet, rather. So my mind will go to something like that. But it's expensive. So that's what stops that from going further. There are lots of things to do. There's lots of stuff in the rainforest, things that have not even been found that would be great. And that's like even on the scientific side. There's a part of me that just loves product, and I could think of antioxidants that come out of things like the durian fruit if I could get rid of the smell. My mind just goes in a million different ideas, and so until I land on something and start execution, I'm still processing.
What do you think about structures on Mars? Recently I came through some information about that, so did you hear about that? Did you see some? Or is just a fantasy of man-made thing?
So structures that look like they're built by civilizations?
Yes, or faces, or things that look like faces, or entrances in the rocks.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think about that?
So there were definitely a few findings over the years where it was the big face on Mars, there was the Yeti on Mars and other things like that. But with better satellite technology, they're always able to zoom in and be like, no, actually that's just a mountain, or that's just a rock that maybe looks like it's some kind of Yeti-like creature walking around. But we even had a rover, I think it was Spirit, that came close to the Yeti and actually figured out it's only like 30 centimeters tall, and just a cool rock, really. So far, nothing has been confirmed that it could be made by some alien civilization or something. I personally think that if we're going to find something on Mars, it's going to be microbes, and most likely in underground structures. So these would be naturally made structures. So for example, lava caves. These are tunnels created by lava flowing, and they leave behind these incredibly big tunnels in places, and humans could actually live in these tunnels on Mars as well. But those would be places where we actually have some chance of finding either existing life or signs of life from the past, so biosignatures. And that's where I want to go and explore those places, and I practice that a lot in Hawaii, so I would love to be able to do that on Mars. But yeah, that's kind of all we know. We know there are these underground labyrinths on Mars, but there's very little hope that some little green men live there, but you never know.
The Pacific, World War II was staged in the Pacific, part of it, not all of it, of course, European. So there's a lot of wrecks in the Pacific, a lot of wrecks. And it's a deep ocean. So there are many things that you can find there if you can go deep. What I would say is, we use radar in the air and sonar in the ocean. And multi-beam sonar is not an exact science. So what it does is it's using sound. So it pings multiple times and it hits an object. So anytime it hits, it could hit anything.
Yeah.
It could hit a whale, it could hit a fish, it could hit, but it's taking that and it's sending that back up. And so there's a lot of interference, which is why it's amazing that they cannot find this flight, right? And I have been next to something and not seen it. even though I have a sonar. It's incredibly hard in the ocean. 80% of the bottom of the world's oceans have not been mapped. We know more about the surface of the moon and Mars than we do about the bottom of the oceans on Earth. It's a mystery. There are so many wrecks. So especially in the Pacific stage of World War II, never ever found. And they were all bombed and all sunk. So I'm not surprised that somebody would want to find or see something there, but I doubt it's from outer space. But I do wonder if you believe in UFOs.
I'm open-minded. I haven't, seen any evidence for something in particular right now, but you never know. Like the universe is incredibly huge. Just think about all the stars are up there, and many of what you see are actually galaxies. And so each galaxy has millions, billions of stars. Each star could have multiple planets. Like the chances for life in space are huge. And I'm currently looking for the microbial ones because they're most likely to be found in our solar system. But beyond our solar system, anything's possible. So, why not? They could be.
I have one last one.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
One last one for me. Is somewhere, you work around people who are related, to these things too. Is there are the people concerned about sun's activities getting stronger and it's get synchronized with activity of galactic sort of sun or light or whatever is there? Like you have a sun and there is something else bigger than sun, much stronger than sun.
So the sun is a star, not a planet. And are you asking
if our sun is getting more active? If you heard, between your kind of people.
Okay.
Heard something
Yeah, I mean,
about that.
there's definitely been a lot of activity reported. I can't say that I've heard that it's increasing substantially, it's going to change massively, but there definitely are cycles in the sun system. And, the sun is part of a big galaxy, which also has its movements, the Milky Way. So there's definitely changes happening, there's definitely cycles, but I'm personally not aware of anything dangerous or alarming that we should be worried about right now. But of course, it is a star, things could happen, and the solar flares and things do affect us, and they do cause damage, and especially near the polar regions. There are some concerns about power outages and things like that with intense solar activity, so that's definitely something people should watch out for, and it should be studied. But again, I'm not aware of anything particularly alarming, so it's just a good thing for now.
I would think when you talk about the sun, think about heat. So when we think about the 2 degrees Celsius, that's the big topic for climate change. That's where I think about where the sun's biggest effect is, because we want to try to not have something more than 2 degrees Celsius, because if we don't control that, we see, and you might have seen the simulations, what parts of the world start to disappear. I think Florida goes away, for example. So if you're fond of Florida, no more Florida. And then different things happen, like you can't grow coffee here and you can't grow wine there, and then you have to shift where your production happens.
Thank you. Well, thank you everyone for your questions. Let's give a huge round of applause to
Our audience tonight was definitely inspired by those amazing astronauts, I call them astronauts, amazing explorers. I think we have learned so much from what you have just said. I wish, as a math teacher, as a STEM teacher, that you could go all around the world and say what you have just said to us, to all the children, not only about the climate change, but of course about exploring the brain, exploring the Mars, So I think it was incredible for all of us, and our huge thank you to both of you that you have found your time on Friday evening. And please, I am really encouraging you to go to younger audience and encourage them to and motivate them. As you said, Vanessa, that you need to think about further future, and you need to get ready for your future already when you are in your 80s, 20s, or even earlier. And Michaela, thank you very much for also sharing your story with the Slovak community, because you are really big inspiration for the Slovak community. And I need to also share that Vanessa also wrote a book, and we are trying to, of course, she also mentioned a lot about the Slovak community in Detroit, and we are also thankful to Vanessa that she is now becoming partially Slovak, because she is really now in mood of going to visit Slovakia and to explore Slovakia. We wish you also explore High Tatras, of course, our mountains, and we wish you all the best in the future. Thank you. And something small from the Slovak mission.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And back to my husband.
Not really. Thank you again, and please enjoy some more drinks. Dinner is served on the other side of the hall, as you know, so please enjoy the rest of the evening. Our guest speakers more than deserve it. Enjoy some good company, and feel free to interact with our guests some more if you would like to. So enjoy the rest of the week, and see you soon again.